So now we're going to go into positives and negatives. Same thing that you learned last year. We're just doing a review over it, and then we're going to connect it to our fractions and decimals. This is multiplying and dividing. These rules are used for multiplying and dividing of negatives and positives. So let's start with something simple. What if I told you I wanted to multiply two groups of three, a positive times a positive? My answer would be I'm building two groups of three. There's one group of three, and there's my other group of three. These are both positive. My groups are positive, and my tokens are positive. My counters are positive. So what do I end up with? Positive 6, right? So I end up with a positive. So this is same basic stuff. But what happens if I were to do two groups of negative 3? And this is how you write 2 times negative 3. 2 times negative 3. What color are my counters going to be? Where'd that come from? Red, right? This is two groups of negative 3. There's 1 and there is 2. Two groups of negative 3. And what am I going to end up with? What's my answer? Negative 6. Negative 6. So now I took a positive and I multiplied it by a negative, and I ended up with a negative. This is two groups of negative 3. What if I had negative 2 groups of positive 3? Let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to do my 2 groups of positive 3. Then there's one group and there's another group. This is 2 groups of positive 3, but I need the opposite of them because I have negative 2 groups. I can't show negative 2 groups, but I can definitely flip these over from positive to negative. Did y'all see what I did? That's 2 groups of 3, but if I want the negative 2 groups, I'm just going to invert these. And what do I get? What's my answer? Also negative 6. Thank you, guys. So I'm doing a negative times a positive, and it gave me a negative. My last one is, what if I had negative groups of negative counters? Negative 2 times negative 3. You really don't need the parentheses out here, but either way, still says negative 2 times negative 3. No multiplication sign being used, no dot being used. What makes it a multiplication? The parentheses. The parentheses are being used for multiplication. So here's one group of negative 3. This is one group of negative 3. Here's my second group of negative 3. So now I have 2 groups of negative 3, but I need negative 2 groups of negative 3. So I'm going to take my counters and take the opposite because I want the opposite groups. So now what did it give me? What's my answer? Positive 6. I took a negative and I multiplied it by a negative, and it gave me a positive. A negative times a negative is a positive. That is, if you can memorize these guys, remember this is only for multiplication and division. This is not for addition and subtraction. This is only for multiplication and division. Now, sometimes we use tools to help us remember. One tool that you use is your tic-tac-toe. Another tool that you can use is your triangle. On your triangle, you put two negatives wherever you want and a positive in the other corner. And then you say, I'm going to scratch this out, my positive. I'm going to scratch my negative, and let's see what it leaves me. That means I'm going to scratch out a negative, scratch out a positive, and what's it going to leave me? It's going to leave me a negative. So a positive times a negative is a negative. And it doesn't matter if it's negative and times positive or positive times negative. Super easy. And it doesn't matter where you put your negatives on your triangle. This is just an extra tool to help you. I have a negative and a positive. I'm going to delete a negative and a positive, and it's going to leave me a negative. And for my last one, I'm taking my triangle, and I have two negatives. So I'm going to get rid of this negative and this negative, and I'm left with a positive. So two negatives equal to a positive. It's the only time where two rights make a wrong. Two wrongs make a right. Only in mathematics, nowhere else. Only in mathematics. So now let's try to put all of this together to do some examples. So I'm going to do keep, change, flip. I'm going to keep my first one. I'm going to change my sign, and I'm going to do the reciprocal, which means I'm flipping my last fraction. So I'm going to simplify before I multiply. This becomes 1 times 2. This becomes 2 times 2. Get rid of my common factors. I'm left with 1. 5 no longer has a common factor with 3 and 2. So I am done simplifying. Now I can multiply across. 1 times 5 is 5. Am I doing something wrong, guys? 3 times 2 is 6. Now, what about my negative sign? I have a negative and I have a positive. Now I can decide what am I going to do with that sign. Well, I have a negative that I'm going to get rid of, and I have a positive that I'm going to get rid of, so I'm left with a negative. So I know my answer has to be a negative. That is it. Let's do one more, and then you will be able to end this really quick. Let's do, this will be your exit ticket. Negative 3/8 divided by negative 16/20. Remember to do keep, change, flip. Simplify before you multiply. So if we're going to do keep, change, flip, we're going to take our negative 3/8 and keep that. We're going to change our multiplication, our division to multiplication, and then we're going to flip 20/16. Flip that to make it 20/16. Now I can simplify before I multiply. I can simplify my 20 with my 8 or my 20 with my 16. I might have to simplify twice. This could be 5 times 4, and this could be 4 times 4, and get rid of my common factor. Now I have a 3 in the numerator and a 5 in the numerator. Do they have anything in common with 8 or with 4? No, they don't. So I can just multiply across. Negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15, And 8 times 4 is 32. So remember, I had two negatives. If I do my triangle, I had a negative and a negative. So I know my answer is going to be a positive. So my answer is 1532.